Okay, welcome to the show, Shay. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Yeah, good, good, good. I came across you through a good friend, Casey, and we've been talking a lot, and he was always saying very good things about you and hooked us both up. So I had a couple of clients using ActiveCampaign recently, actually, and yeah, it's always been interesting when I've been, working with clients on different CRMs or landing page programs or whatever. It always sort of comes across as one of the options. So really good to have you here.
No, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, shout out and thank you to Casey as well for making the introduction.
I was listening to one of your other podcasts, and you said it's weird. You're a marketer who's marketing to other marketers. Is this like the ultimate sort of marketing bubble? Like, how do you make sure you don't get trapped in that sort of sphere?
Yeah, you can, honestly. Um, in many ways, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Like it's a dream job to market to other marketers. I think it'd be very similar to a developer building developer tools, right, for developers. But it's one where it we're not short of our opinions or the things we think are important or what would attract similar folks to us. It always goes back to first principles, though, right? Getting out there, talking to your customers, understanding their use cases, using their own words in your marketing to best represent them, experimenting, knowing that even though we have strong opinions or thoughts of what would attract us, that we might not be representative or indicative of all. I talk about Casey. Casey recently joined the team, just leaning into someone who joins, coming in with a fresh perspective, knowing that we're probably too close to it over time. And that someone new to the team has new ideas, new insights. They're experiencing this for the first time. And that's the same experience so many of our customers or prospects have, right? So just really, really leaning into them to say, hey, don't be shy about what doesn't make sense or what's not registering or clicking. Those are all opportunities for us.
And look, I had a look at your background as well. So very curious. You started in design, and then sort of there's a bit of web dev in there, and then doing lots of different things. So starting community around sort of the Boston area, I'm guessing mostly with founders or technology people, and then that sort of led into I think that you still run today, which is like a mentoring program.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I have a very weird background.
Yeah, it was very diverse. And then you sort of kind of went into a product role, which is obvious, if you're development and design, like, a product role makes sense there. But, you had that sort of UX, UI background, which is a bit more, I would say, front end focused. And then, that's then led into
Mhm.
sort of platform strategy. And then from platform strategy, sort of all the way up to where you are now, which is a CMO of ActiveCampaign. Now, how many other CMOs have gone through that path?
Yeah. I haven't met any. It's not to say that they're not out there, but I have not exactly seen that path.
Yeah, because normally, when a startup gets a bit bigger, they ship in a CMO from some other big brand or some ex agency sort of experience or something like that, and you'll have a head of product who's quite sort of dominant, or the CPO, engineering team, and then sort of like they'll ship in an external one. That you don't tend to get people coming up through the roots. So how did that sort of move happen? What was there an old CMO, or can you tell me some background story on that? Or
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go back a little further. Like my origins are in design. That's what I went to school for. That's been the love and passion of mine. But I'll clarify it. That's design in the sense of how do you use design to solve a problem. I care a
right,
lot about the aesthetics, the beauty, the artistic nature of it. I care more about making sure we're solving an intent or an explicit problem first, right? And creating some value through it. So I've always been oriented that way in my career, and that has led me deeper into engineering. So that as I've designed something, you'd be like, hey, actually, how difficult is that to build, and how do we manage scope in that? And is this really possible? That led me deeper into product because I was like, all right, I'm designing, building these things, but I don't even know if there's real value to it yet. I'm not understanding the market or exactly how this could be used. And that led me further into marketing because it's like, well, you can also create demand for products, like the full nature of it. And I spent most of my career in hypergrowth kind of B2B SaaS startups, where honestly, you do a little bit of everything. So to be the designer, engineer, product manager, ops, marketer, that's not uncommon. And when I joined Active Campaign, the company was a little over 100 folks, somewhere between 20 and 25 million in revenue. And when I joined, it was to lead all functions of design, be it both product design and brand design. But I remember talking to Jason, our CEO and founder, and just saying, hey, I really love the gray areas of an organization where we can kind of identify that there's probably opportunity over there, but we're not quite sure how to organize it or formalize it or what that will become. I love chasing those. And very quickly, it was one of, there's probably a lot we could do on the design side and things we can improve. I have a little bit of pause on whether or not we'll actually be able to build that and deliver that. So just sharing some of that with Jason, he's like, hey, I think maybe you should go lead engineering. Like you should take design and engineering and just do what you think needs to be done over there. And I'll help you, but let's get into this. And it was one where I joined the team and just helped them implement some processes, understand the vision of the business, hire some good leaders. And, I was not by any stretch in the weeds of, hey, here's how to architect this database, or here's how I think this should go. It was mostly just helping them understand the direction we needed to be. And did that for close to a year until we more formally went out and hired a CTO. And in that same kind of process, Jason was like, that went well. Like we actually got the team moving and increase in velocity. You should go do the same thing in marketing. You should switch engineering for marketing and jump into that org. And same thing, help give them the vision, implement the right size processes, hire some good folks and get it moving. And I did that for a couple of years, actually, to which I reached a point and said, hey, Jason, we should probably hire a CMO. There's a lot of other things I could do in this business. We have tons of different integrations, but we don't have a partnership or strategy team. We might want to look at doing an acquisition or two. I think I could take those on, and let's go get a CMO who's done this before, who could help us really scale. And Jason said, and that makes sense. Let's do that. So I stepped away from marketing, actually went out and built out our platform strategy team, and then went out and built out our partner management functions, our developer relations functions, corp dev function, went out and did an acquisition for us, by which I've always still stayed involved in the marketing pieces where I always have ideas, always have a little bit of feedback and things I'm seeing, until eventually almost a year ago, kind of reached this point of, hey, what we were doing in marketing before, it was working. It was going well. And in a weird way, it was this idea of that product-led growth before product-led growth was the buzz or trend of the moment. We were just doing it because that was my background in some respect, right? And Jason himself very much product-oriented. So the way we were leading marketing was closer to product management than maybe a more traditional or corporate marketing team. And Jason said, hey, like, would you want to go back into marketing and help bring some of those roots back, establish some of what was working? I said, yeah, I would love to. Like, I think the opportunity, just the size and scale from when I was in there to where we are today is just a whole different challenge. But in that same respect, I think that just the role of a CMO has actually evolved, right? Like day one at ActiveCampaign 6 years ago, I would have never guessed I'd be CMO. But watching just even the role of the CMO evolve to be, I honestly think it's, in a SaaS business, you are closer to the product, right? You are a little bit deeper in the strategy components and sides of it. Brand is an important piece of that, but it's not the only thing, where you really have to have more of that qualitative and quantitative mix. And I don't know, my background, it fits that. Like it's been a pretty well, just smooth transition into some of that, just in the orientation I come from.
That's really good. You said something there about product-led growth, and look, I follow a lot of these PLG people, and I found like the last sort of year, some of the SaaS market has sort of, the wind has come out of some of the sales in some sectors, like it's quite disproportional. A lot of consolidation, a lot of M&A activity, funding costs have gone up, that kind of thing. So a lot of SaaS now are sort of talking beyond product-led growth. And there's other terms floating around like community-led growth, there's brand-led growth, sales-led growth. Everything has like something led growth in it, right? Ultimately, the customer sort of buys a larger offering. There's layers on top of the most obvious part of the product. Like, what are your thoughts around something led growth? Is it a combination of factors that leads to revenue acquisition and retention of customer base and net growth, or is it just the product? Or as a CMO, how many of those other little components are you sort of looking at as well?
The tagline led growth, right? X, Y, Z led growth it's a trend. It's folks have jumped into that, and that's okay. I'd say one is, all of those can be true. It's going to be different by business in a lot of ways, right? And there's a difference in scale, I believe, of businesses too, where the smaller you are, getting one of those to work really well, nailing a channel, that works. Honestly, like you can drive a lot of growth through one channel. I think when you reach certain thresholds or to a point, one channel is not going to deliver the year-over-year growth you probably need. And you probably have to get multiple of those going, right? It's not just product-led growth you're needing, but yeah, you might need some community-led growth or partner-led growth, and you might start to run different go-to-market motions, and those stack, right, to continually drive growth. I don't know that there's one you're going to hitch to and ride in the perpetuity of your business. That's I've not seen that.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was reading this blog post by WP Engine's founder. He's got Smart Bear blog or something, but anyway, he's looking at sort of like channels, sort of like they come up, they grow, you hit diminishing returns. They got to keep layering other initiatives on top to sustain that sort of that growth up to the right. And yeah, I sort of think in the same way. Like you exhaust something, you'll hit sort of maximum partnership potential, and there's not much more to go, or you have a channel. You did say that you've sort of been with ActiveCampaign for quite a bit, from very early days with sort of less customers to where you are now with like hundreds of thousands. What has changed the most, do you think, in that sort of layering or those Lego blocks that you're building into a bigger machine as you hit those thresholds of diminishing return, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. It might depend in a few different ways. Ask a different way, like how does marketing evolve? How does that change, right? And it's interesting. I was actually talking to a company earlier today, and they're very specifically wanted to talk to me, funny enough, about product-led growth. And they were trying to think of what's the right referral program for our customer base, and how do we bring them back? And kind of in essence, I was like, your customer base is not large enough. Like that is not the strategy or area where you probably need to be investing right now. The effort to return probably won't pay off. And I think that is something we've had to learn in some ways, where channels that have worked generally are still working, but the investment into them is not going to drive the incremental growth we want to see, right? And we've had to iterate, evolve, and the lens of thinking just changes to that, right? It's the idea of getting 100 new trials, 200 new trials a day is not that exciting right now. Like that should be into the thousands at our scale, right? And where we need to go. So the orientation of how you have to change your thought there's a rewiring there. And I even noticed that when people join ActiveCampaign, the velocity of the business is very fast. It's very high, right? Like there's factors of scale where every day counts, right? Like when you're going to do tens of thousands of trials, adding thousands of customers every month, to make a change today can directly impact this week, this month. It's the cycle times for us is not, hey, what do we want to do this quarter or this year? Like we'll think in that space, but the actions to it, we stack pretty rapidly. And the stretch of how to think in long-term cycles is that's a muscle I don't know that people organically have, that we have to build inside of ActiveCampaign.
Yeah, because I've noticed like a lot of startups that I've worked with, very early stage to sort of mid stage, and I normally tap out once it gets to about 100 mil ARR. They're sort of looking to scale and get a lot bigger. That's sort of beyond where I fit, right? But I do notice sometimes they'll start with the first sort of head of growth or marketing, and then that person will sort of reach their limits of that sort of operation velocity, and then they'll hire somebody else to come in that's a bit used to doing a bigger stage company, and then they have a kind of different skill set, might be a bit more hands off or sort of team orientated, or start outsourcing, and then they'll grow to another size again, they'll get someone else in. So yes, it's interesting. You've been there probably long enough to see quite a few of those sort of changes almost in the growth culture of the company. And there's a lot of talk now around brand in the SaaS world, maybe as some preferred channels are hitting prices or yields which are a bit lower than they previously were. There's been a lot of inflation in the costs of some of these digital advertising channels, and just anti-spam that's always there, things like email marketing and stuff like that. What's your opinion on brand? Because it's quite topical right now, brand versus product-led growth. Where do you see that evolving into your current role?
You've nailed it, right? The paid acquisition channels are getting way more expensive. The competition is honestly increasing through those. You're seeing like the bids on certain terms, if you're going on the search engine marketing side, like it's wild. And for Active Campaign, our price points at the entry end of the market, right? Like we have a CRM. The price comparison between Salesforce and Active Campaign, it is wide, right? And so what they're able to afford or spend towards multiples larger than what we can. So I think that requires us to get creative in the growth we have and where we go. A lot of that breaks down into having more verticalized approaches, thinking more tightly around competitive campaigns, or even just digging in a little deeper to use cases. And so not necessarily searching for keywords of product or categories, but the use case they're really trying to solve, right? So someone might not be searching for marketing automation. They're searching for an abandoned cart trigger or action, right? Could we be in those places? So we definitely have to get more creative around it. The idea of brand and all of that, there's a balance. And sometimes I'll see folks over index on either end of that. They'll be, they're the quant mindset, they're the performance marketer, and it's about numbers and optimization. Or it's it's all about brand, and we want to tell this story and create affirmation and market, and that's going to drive growth. And I've honestly always been in the mind like it's both. It really is both. So for us, we think about brand in a way of, are there ways to use organic channels to influence brand? So for example, can we go into LinkedIn and create more buzz, more conversation by our employee base? It's kind of the easiest way to do it. But can we get our partners and customers to share more about us? Can we do that in review marketplaces? So for example, we have over 10,000 G2 reviews. There's a playbook that we have ran to go do that, right? It's as folks have certain moments in the product and find certain just key areas of success, we recommend them go leave a review, right? We don't recommend that just blatantly after you've been with us, 6 months to go leave a review, but it's more opportune to kind of the events or things you're doing on the platform. And we take that idea and spread it. Even this podcast, right, is a way of us organic channel, getting out some of our brand awareness. And we think about those areas of doing it. It's not in the lens of, hey, we need to sponsor a bunch of events, or, we need to get some out of home billboards up in airports, things like that. Like I think for many businesses that works. Those are probably more enterprise target audiences, right? Where more in that mid-market-esque scenario, if you will.
Yeah, look, I'm actually doing a survey at the minute around the answers to it. So can I ask you this question, like, very simply, but in your best words, on the spot? What is brand to you? Because this is a term that gets used a lot, but it is quite amorphous. People have trouble describing what it is. So when you're saying, oh, we hired a head of brand, I'm like, well, what is that person actually going to do? And I find depending on their experience, they'll come at brand from different angles, because it is quite a holistic concept. Just to explain to people, what's your interpretation of brand? Because you have a pretty balanced, I think, view.
In its simple essence, brand is an identity. It's kind of who you are, how you're different from others. It should evoke strong, positive emotions. When you think of some company, brand would tell you, well, how are they different from someone else, and why is that? And that how they're different or why they're different probably is somewhat correlated to their values, not just their product, good, or service, right? Like if someone asks you the difference between Patagonia and Adidas, right? Like your mind can just start to shape and think, well, Patagonia is this orientation of caring about the environment and donating to it, being outside, where Adidas is going to give you more of a sports orientation or just different drive. It just becomes their identity, right? Like, and it's, you might not even be talking about the quality of the products or service, et cetera, but just kind of whom they are at their heart. So simulate brand with identity in most respects.
Great. Okay, that's a good explanation. Now, you are a CMO. I've also seen very early stage companies hire a CMO. I'm talking like as the only or second hire. This is a term that gets floated around a lot. So I just wanted to maybe get your opinion on clearing some of the responsibilities that you do, perhaps that people don't think a head of marketing would be doing. There's a head of department level, I would say, or the head of marketing. There
Mhm.
may be a director level, which is maybe a bit above that. In the US, often this VP term gets used interchangeably with sometimes C-suite or just below, depending on the structure. And SVP, and then you've sort of got maybe a CMO or C-suite above that. Like, what are the sort of differences, do you think, in the responsibilities of those levels?
A lot of it depends on the size of the business, as you said, right? And I alluded to this a little earlier, but in a smaller business, you kind of got to do everything. You are more of that generalist, right? Um, you're you're not only thinking about demand generation, you're thinking about the life cycle and not only do we bring people into active campaign, but how do we convert them to customers, or how do we think about their onboarding? Um, you're not only the event marketer, but you're also running social media channels and trying to engage folks in different areas. So I think in smaller orgs, you're going to see just more generalist in there, and the titles are probably elevated to that in some ways, right? Heads of probably like carry a little bit differently. When you get into larger businesses, it those titles start to get more specific, right? Like you're the director of demand gen, or VP of, be it lifecycle, et cetera. And I think that's where you start to see more just functional expertise in those lenses. The other question there, like to think about it, just take the function out of the equation for a minute, is tactical to strategical, right? Like there's and the smaller businesses, you kind of got to do both, right? You're setting some of the strategy and executing it, and the balance of that work is probably more 20% strategy, 80% execution. And I'm pulling random figures out. I don't
Yep.
know that to be exact, but
Yep.
I'm going to guess the majority of the time is actually in the execution or tactical work. And as you get into larger orgs in the leadership levels, that flip flops, right? Like you're going to spend more time in the strategy, you're cross-functionally organizing, orienting with folks. Personally, I still love to stay close to the execution and the tactics of it. That is a blessing and a curse, quite honestly. To your point, I think in larger businesses, you're going to see folks in leadership side go more on the strategic sides.
Yeah, great. And reporting metrics probably as well along with that, right? It's not always very glamorous kind of work, is it? It's putting out fires, team dynamics, vision, analysis reports, executive meetings, briefings. It's not always that cracked up to be.
Yeah, it's challenging, no doubt. I've said it in the past too, where I've had a lot of different roles, right? I've been a designer, I've been an engineer, I've been a product manager, been a marketer, been in ops. I've led teams doing all of those different types of functions as well. Marketing has been the hardest, in that everyone is doing roughly something different. Where when I'm leading a design team, we're all designers, and we might be designing different parts of the product or different things in the brand. We're product managers, we're all building something. But you get into marketing, like the average day might be something from an executive level conversation. We're talking about the strategy or briefing, and then I'll jump from that directly into reviewing a press release. And then I'll leave that and go look at, what might be some iterations or changes we're making to our lifecycle nurturing and how we're thinking about our conversion rates. I might leave that, and then we're thinking about internal comms and an event we're going to run for the team and how we might do something different. Everyone's doing something different. There are 30 some odd folks that all have different roles, and understanding those roles is it will stretch you. But there's definitely a new level of appreciation in that too.
Great, that's awesome. Yeah, I find there's a lot of scope creep as well. So once you've got a marketing department, even within the other departments, they'll sort of lean on you for all these different things. Oh, can you make this look prettier? Or can you help me voice this
Totally.
communication that's got to go out? Or we've got an event. Can we get it sponsored? Or I had this idea. Like I saw this billboard. Are we doing billboards?
Yeah.
And then you're kind of having to fend off. It's like
Yeah.
a product manager role. Like there's an unlimited request backlog that you got to deal with, right? It's like this prioritization that you've got to go through and like be really brutal about in a polite way.
Yeah. No, it's I tell the team all the time, like it's if we are not careful, you can become a service org to the rest of the
Mhm.
business. Folks will come in, they'll ask for things, and your job will essentially become giving them what they're asking for, working with them on it. And in a lot of areas, like we have to do that, right? Like the cross-functional collaboration of marketing is critical to our success. But there's a lot of things we need to drive that we have to deliver for the business. And we cannot let our eyes or sights off that. Like we could get pulled off track very quickly.
Yeah.
So you have to keep a filter of what that is or what that makes sense. And it will probably pain you some days to have to say no or to reduce some scope. And I'll give you an example. Like we were recently doing, like one of our leaders was doing an all hands and just with their broader team, right? So they're getting, I think, 100 and some odd folks together, and they're like, "Hey, will you help me with my deck? Will you help, create this presentation?" And I want to so badly. I want to because I know that presentation is going to get shared, and then people will duplicate it. They'll take slides from it. Inevitably, it starts ending up in customer presentations. Like it just spreads, right? Things like
Mhm.
that just happen in an org. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm also looking at, hey, what projects are we running? Where do we need to execute? Where would that cognitively shift a focus that we would lose some pacing and, just change has some inevitable cost where I had to tell that person, I'm sorry, I can give you a template and you can use our brand guidelines and, some of the assets we have. And you kind of have to do it. You're going to have to take the first pass at this. You have to put the deck together. And when you have it done, I'm happy to look at it, review it, and offer some feedback and critique. But you're going to own this one, and that hurts, especially coming from the design background. Like I care so much about those
Yeah.
details, and I want to make it perfect. I also know that that's the impact of that is not going to carry as much as some of the other things we could be and should be doing in the business.
Hey, so just before you said you've worked in engineering, product, and all these different roles, and like marketing is like almost the most complex or hardest. In the tech world, what do you think most people misinterpret about the marketing function itself? So, what are these things that are like very orthodox within the community of people that haven't ever worked in that role that to sort of be wrong
Mm,
or misinterpreted?
That's a good question. Probably similar to design, where this might be such a cheesy answer too, but like everyone has an opinion about it. Like it's marketing can be subjective in that nature, right? That's where I like to bring a lot of data and analytics to the table and say, well, and if it makes sense, let's test that. We'll see. But it always opinions, always, like nothing short of folks sharing ideas, and like I love that too. Like I don't want to take that wrong, right? Like so many great ideas come in that we're not thinking about or haven't seen, that there's a balance of listening to folks, interpreting that, taking action on it so that you keep them coming back and sharing that, versus staying focused too and also delivering the results we're held to. Um,
Mhm.
so I think, I don't know, that everyone has an opinion there. And the other side I mentioned a little earlier is marketers can lean heavily on brand versus performance marketing too. I've seen, and I really, really believe those are two sides of the same coin. Like one without the other isn't as efficient or isn't going to give you the scale you probably want.
Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah, I find some people come from a very tactical sort of in and out performance marketing background, and yeah, they sort of don't think of that sort of larger piece, or even all the other channels that exist. The other 60 something of them. There's just so many.
But what would be, I guess, I'm curious on your side, like what have you seen there? What misinterpretations or misrepresentations have you felt on the marketing side yourself?
Like just well, it's funny because I'm doing this research right now, which asks one of the questions, "What is marketing?" And there's extreme variability in what the answers are to that very simple question. So I find some of the terms we use the most, and the same goes with brand. Um, the more amorphous they are, or multi-faceted with lots of variables, the harder it is to describe what they are. And that's very much true with marketing. I think there's a lot of people who maybe haven't worked inside. I think it's a sort of a promotional sort of function. So, they come with the lens of, oh, it's talking or advertising or some sort of like outbound channel, which then
Mm.
sells. And, often a lot of brand investments aren't there just to sell. They're often to do multiple things. It could be affecting the image of the organization to, get a partnership deal across the line, or to, help with talent
Totally.
acquisition. So not always just related to a sale. And there's other people that, think, marketing is just advertising. And advertising is just one subset of communications. So other people think it's like PR, or they'll have this sort of other flavor. And a lot of them don't realize that originally it included product and included distribution and included pricing,
Yeah.
and promotion is just sort of one facet of that. So when I've been asking this question, it's just funny to see which component of that broader spectrum they sort of land on first, and then I'm comparing that to their background within the discipline or outside the discipline. And it's been very interesting.
You raised a really good point in that, and where marketing could get misconstrued in that it's about sales and creating growth for the business, but there's a lot of pieces of marketing that fall outside of that, and it could be the employee brand and trying to recruit folks to join the organization. It could be, hey, we're going to go do some fundraising, so we need to actually market to investors,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a lot of different pieces where there's projects or things we take on that is not tied directly to sales in the business, but it's I also love it for that, right? Like there's always somewhat of a different challenge or hook there.
It's funny. I was just working with a client recently, and we very early stage sort of client, so it was sort of more advisory role. But I was helping them out with some of their LinkedIn, right? And we're sort of boosting some posts and doing some content there, and we were having trouble, getting the actual customers to get a sale. But all the investors are hanging out on the LinkedIn page, right? And when it came to the next raise, because I'd done so much work there and so much traction, winning awards, and there's lots of people commenting everything, they thought things were going really, really well. And then when it sort of came to the revenue miss, they were kind of surprised, going, "Oh, what is that?" So I do see the power of it. I was thinking at the time when I'm doing this, I'm like, this won't get us customers, but he wants it anyway. And then I'm like, oh, actually, it's probably a good piece of internal marketing for some of the other stakeholders anyway, and I sort of prove that hypothesis in a way. So you're kind of providing that image that's maybe a bit rosier than some of the figures underneath as well. Sometimes. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I know you sort of mentioned this before. You did drop a word in there, marketing automation. I'm going to put the spotlight on you, because I know in technology, you may start with a product here, and then you'll add on different features, and it sort of become this thing, and you're talking about use cases, and your product starts to get really, really big. And the danger with that is sometimes you can bleed into so many what we call purchase categories or product categories that it becomes hard to describe what it is. And then the customer gets confused, and that's not always a good idea. So over to you on the spot. What is Active Campaign? Like, what does it do?
Oh, it's a great question. And you're absolutely right. I think as we've evolved our product, as it's changed, we've struggled to articulate that at times. Um, the simplest way to think about Active Campaign and to define it down to its core is it's a marketing automation platform. There's a lot in that, right? We have email marketing, we have a CRM, there's landing pages, you have forms, there's a plethora of different channels and things you could drive, but the very heart of what we do, it's an automation platform. And the way we think about that is in a sense of, we want you to use the best tools to run your business, right? There's what you do, John, to what we do. There's probably some slight nuances and things that are going to be better for you and better for us. The idea is you should be able to integrate all those tools into Active Campaign. And then by which, when you're integrating them, the data comes in a unified manner, right? So that it's understood what is a customer contact or what is an event. And if we have all that data, then you can really start to take action on it. And our action is around automation, right? How you can start build automation based off that data. And you have to have the data so that you have the right triggers. You can then start to personalize the experiences, the content to those folks. And for us, we think deeply about that component of it. So I say it's an automation platform. It's really thinking about how do you do that, not only with our native channels, but how do you build automation into the other tools you have? And fundamentally, how do you create an incredible customer experience? So it's the easiest way to think about it would be the marketing automation platform.
Great. Okay. With that said, you also mentioned you use your platform to grow your own business, right? So product
Yeah.
proof right there. Tell me in which ways you have found your own tool beneficial for that process.
Yeah. We use ActiveCampaign to run the entire go-to-market experience, right? So all of the forms on our website, those are forms from ActiveCampaign, right? You submit one of those, you get into our ActiveCampaign database. You're going to start to go through some form of nurturing, and those are all automations that are essentially using our site tracking to know what parts of the platform are you visiting or what parts of the website are you going to. We're starting to build more of an understanding of who are you and what are you interested in. That changes some of our messaging and marketing. You create a trial. All of the nurturing through that trial is automations ran by ActiveCampaign, right? Dynamically changing or adjusting to the things you're doing in the product. You reach a certain threshold, we'll create a deal in the ActiveCampaign CRM. And a sales rep will pick up, start working, engaging with you on. So yeah, we use it in all respects of our go-to-market motion, honestly. And it's, we talked a little earlier about being a marketer, marketing to marketers. It's also, we use this tool every day. Like I am in it every day. So kind of, you become an expert in it in many respects too. And that's to give feedback into product engineering, et cetera. You have a different level of influence there, which has been helpful in just a sense of how we've grown, how we evolved, and how we've used the platform. We're changing, iterating on that frequently, right? So always a little iteration in it, but yeah, ActiveCampaign has been, in a meta story, we've grown ActiveCampaign using ActiveCampaign.
Okay. On the flip side then, we're talking about sort of marketing automation here and a lot of tech tools around, tactical efficiency. So it's an execution, it's efficiency or operational kind of efficiency thing, right? And that is a lot of marketing tech, to be honest. I find sometimes the Achilles heel of these tools is that it doesn't compensate for strategic validity. So you need these tools to do things better, more automated, lower cost or whatever. But that doesn't mean it's always the right thing to do in the first place, and doesn't sort of account for maybe the trade-offs between doing some of these things or a layer of decision making that goes into it that sits on top. So back to you. What things do you need to apply that aren't included in your tool?
For example, we don't run our entire website through ActiveCampaign. So we use a different tool, a different platform to structure that. We use a lot of integrations too. So a lot of the data enrichment components we'll use external tools for. Things that help us define, identify third-party intent, right? Where it's not going to be on our own platforms. We use our own version of site tracking, but we use different analytics tools, right? To get more understanding of, what is the type of traffic or what type of attribution can we start to do or modeling off of. So there's no shortage of tools, I would say, we're using in marketing or that sales has that get layered into it. And most of those, we also go out and try and build partnerships too, right? Like we try and get a native integration built, connected between the two products and platforms. So I'd say by all stretches, ActiveCampaign is not trying to be the all-in-one platform for all of these things too.
Integrations, interesting there. I noticed on your homepage over 160, so quite a few. And just can you talk a bit about, because no one talks about this, about the power of distribution and those some people call them partnerships, with other people within the supply vertical, or across the vertical that other customers would be using, and other tools or stacks that'd be already using. And if there isn't the integration there, they go, I can't use that tool because XYZ. How important is that sort of that network or ecosystem of distribution integrations to customer acquisition and growth?
I'm glad you clarified like the customer acquisition and growth side, because I would have different answers on usage of what does it mean to be a user of the platform, right? Like going back to that idea of a lot of those integrations bring the data in that changes your experience. So the vast majority of our customers have an integration. So the retention, stickiness components of them significantly stronger when there's an integration tied to it. On the customer acquisition side, or just how broadly as a distribution or channel there, it can honestly vary. Some of them absolutely critical in just driving growth and bringing new customers to ActiveCampaign. And those folks are generally somewhat upstream from where we sit, right? So in running your business, there's an order of how you actually go purchase your tools. So we look at what are the tools you'd purchase before ActiveCampaign. And for most folks, that's a website platform. So am I using WordPress? Am I using Squarespace? If I'm in e-commerce, I'm probably using Shopify or WooCommerce, and those, right? Those partnerships drive a ton for us, right? And that they're looking for, all right, I got a website, I'm starting to collect some visitors and build some traffic. What do I do next? How do I engage those folks? Where does this come from, right? Those partnerships, incredible for us. And you see similar ways too, where folks garner leads, be it through Facebook lead ads or LinkedIn, et cetera, right? So what do I do with these leads? How do I actually start to nurture them? Things like that. And you'll see that with forms products, landing page products, et cetera. Like those can drive good value into our growth. There's plenty of other integrations too, where it's the next logical step after ActiveCampaign, right? Where we're probably doing more for some of those partners than they do for our own growth. But that's okay too, because it does build in that retention component, builds in more ways to have a stronger customer experience for our customers. So, for ourselves and our customer acquisition, we're generally looking just slightly up that stack of what is someone buying before they buy us. And that's where we've seen we can drive a lot of growth.
Yeah, great. I really like this. And just on that note, I was talking to another friend who runs the Martech Weekly. It's a sort of international marketing tech newsletter, and he was talking about sort of iPass, this movement from CRMs, because you mentioned a CRM as a component of ActiveCampaign, and this sort of movement from CRMs to CDPs, and then there's all this integration suites as well. So Zapier gets put into the mix. Klaviyo obviously would be a sort of a quasi competitor to you, if not sort of pretty close competitor in some respects. And there's all this sort of like blending of different things. And, do we need to have a stack that does everything, or can we just use tools to connect everything together into a sort of composable, CDP, or, whatever it is. Composable stacks, I think, is another term going around. Like everyone's like so confused if you're not working inside this, and can get sort of like, what's the next acronym that's going to come out, right? What is your thoughts on sort of the current state of the tech stack? Let's just talk specifically in marketing function, and then perhaps where it's going, what the trends are, and where you fit into that.
Yeah. Ooh, can I give you two answers?
Yes. That was a big question. So,
because I want to talk about the CDP iPass side of this for a second, and then I can speak more broadly about like MarTech and that stack piece, if you will. On the CDP and iPass side, there's something kind of like unique I see in this, and that of you're kind of a business of scale if you're in either of those, right? Like you're starting to do some unique things. So, just kudos and congratulations. That's a good place to be. In the CDP, you see a lot of folks set up and you integrate tools to get all your data in there, and very similar. You might put that in a unified kind of type of data model, but usually that is just to glean insights off of, right? You're probably layering in some BI or visualization tool off of it. it's very difficult to take action on the data out of a CDP. It's there, it's great, it's insightful, but you don't have the channels, you don't necessarily have the integrations to go do something with that. So inevitably, the action has to happen somewhere else. So there's a little bit of a hiccup on the CDP side. Opposite of that, you have iPasses, where, yep, you get the integrations and you can start to bring a lot of that tooling together. And a lot of those folks even have automation capabilities, right? Where the automation starts to turn into a if this, then that, and kind of central plumbing. So this event, I want you to take this data, I want you to send it over here, right? And if this event happens, I want you to look at it. If the data says this, send it over here. And if not, send it over there. And helpful, right? That there's a lot of value to that. The problem is it doesn't have the data in an organized, unified manner to actually have any intelligent decision making there, or to do anything that would more personalize that experience, absent of someone literally setting up all those flows by hand, right? And that is a management headache. That's where I get excited about ActiveCampaign, because we sit in the middle of those two. There's a sweet spot where if you want to use ActiveCampaign as a CDP, kind of that composable CDP, you can, right? Like, we have a version of custom objects. We have unified data model. You can bring and integrate all those different tools. The kicker then, though, is you have channels and you have integrations to take direct action on all of that data. And we layer in different forms of artificial intelligence to not necessarily make you make all the decisions there either, right? So for example, as we learn more about you, we have the data on those integrations, we can start to build patterns of what causes someone to convert and what doesn't. And we'll do things like predictable content, where you might write a couple different versions of content, and we'll help you decide which is the best one to send to any individual person at a time. You don't have to figure that out yourself. We got you. Send time optimization is another simple answer there, but most folks do that in a batched campaign manner, where it's, hey, I want to send this campaign to 10,000 people. You tell me when's the best time to send it to them. We do it in an automation. So it's not just to say that when this event happens, trigger this email. It's, all right, that event happens. When is the right time to send that email or take that next best action? We use artificial intelligence there. So you actually bring artificial intelligence into that decision-making process, which is important. So I have strong feelings about iPasses and CDPs and kind of where they sit, but I think ActiveCampaign is a very sweet spot in the middle. Okay. Passionate about that. Yeah. If I can address the MarTech side of it, it's interesting, right? Like, there's it started as the MarTech, like, 500, now we're up to 10,000. Like, there's studies on just how vast this market is, and every year Scott Brinker and crew put out an annual report, and it's the exponential growth of it is wild. I'm kind of a fan of it in many ways, in that there's a lot of interesting, unique tools coming together that really, as I said earlier, the best tool for the job, right? And I would not be surprised to see that continue to grow, by which you might have one tool that is your CRM and that does kind of your pipelines, but you might even use a different tool to do your deal routing, to say, when is the right, when does this deal go to this person versus someone else? You're probably using different tools to do enrichment, to find data in those opportunities. You're probably using a tool like Gong that does some call recording and some intelligence definition and building. You're probably using a different tool that does all your enablement and tracking on whether someone's opening that enablement and how far are they clicking through it and what enablement has the best outcome rates. I think the number of tools in the go-to-market motion is only going to continue to increase, honestly. And that different tools are going to start to hone in on different specialties. And that's okay, because it's, in a sense, you can't have one tool that does them all and expect that it's going to be the absolute best at all of them. They're, as we mentioned, competition's growing. So folks are going to find every little edge or advantage they can get. And I think there will be tools that provide a lot of that. So I find it interesting. I think other folks might find it exhausting and frustrating, and that the tools are vast, but there's power to be found in that too.
So TLDR, get a really good marketing ops person inside your organization, right? Because this isn't getting any less complex over time, right?
In
Hey,
summary,
you
yes.
did mention
Yeah.
AI, and you sort of like integrated that into a use case, right? Which is really interesting and sort of made it. I mean, I haven't used the feature, but it sounded like pretty seamless in terms of like its utility was high. It wasn't just like tacked on, which is, it's AI is a big buzzword at the minute. Valuations are very high in some companies that are touting it. A lot of legacy software I see maybe have seen themselves in the crosshairs of getting disrupted by these AI stacks or products off the back end of that. So they're sort of like panicking, going, let's shove it on and say we're AI enabled now. Um, can you tell me like how are you using it? What are people getting wrong around this or misinterpreting? So we can
Yeah.
kind of try to delineate between the buzzwordy side of AI versus what it's actually using right now to produce value for companies.
AI is having just an incredible moment right now, and has at a heightened measure the last 6 months, right? Maybe a little more. Um, I It has been around a long time, right? We even in ActiveCampaign, we've had a form of predictive content, predictive sending, um, even just the way we do lead scoring analysis, all of that. Um, we've been using AI in a number of different ways for quite some time. This generative AI side is really starting to change some things. And we built that into the platform too. So you can use AI to help write different emails. You can use it here soon to write out copy for landing pages, etc. We're very excited about that. Just more broadly as a market right now, that content generation side. I don't think that's the most exciting piece we're going to get from this. Um, I think AI's ability to pull insights and to make decisions is where it gets very exciting. I'll give you two examples of what we're playing with on this. One is next week, we're going to roll out just a different trial onboarding flow and use AI to help basically have a chat, have a conversation with someone who's creating the trial to take what is the form we have today of what's your name, what's your vertical, etc., to have AI start to run that conversation, but then change it based off of what it's learning or adapting to say, okay, what type of market are you in and what problems are you trying to address or solve? We can then start to prompt them with some multiple choices, et cetera, that you fundamentally couldn't solve because you'll get deep into the vertical or very specific tactics that someone's trying to execute against. And then when you get into the product or platform, that will be your onboarding guide, will be all the things you said or were recommended with a decent level of intelligence around them, right? All right, here's what you're going to need to go do that. So it's one way, like we're actually changing some of just our own flows. Then inside an automation where anyone who's built an automation, we have this kind of what you see is what you get editor, and there's this canvas by which you can add objects to, and you got, you have to customize it, kind of lay all that out. And we have plenty of templates or recipes we give folks to get started, but we built the capability that just you tell us what you want. So you can literally go into the automation and say, hey, I want to send 3 reminders all a day apart. Cool. And we'll automatically just dynamically build that automation to where it'll add a wait step for a day. It'll send a reminder out to someone, it'll add another wait step, send a reminder, and then it'll create a goal at the end. And the goal is to do, they make a purchase. And if that happens, they'll opt them out of the automation. You won't have to build all that by hand. You'll literally just describe what you want to us, and we'll be able to build that out. So it's in its early innings there, but there's ways where it'll fundamentally change. Those insights, the decision making that AI can do for you is the superpower. I think content generation is incredible and there's a lot of power to it, but that's not the most exciting part right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you just mentioned you use AI for almost sales or pre-sales, and then onboarding, and then config of the tool. And this is interesting because we get to this point where there's a lot of legacy platforms out there. A very large company that starts with the word S, and I have a big tower in San Francisco. Anyway, they are very much known for separating the implementation team out from, and getting agents or third parties to sell that and do the sort of messy onboarding phase and discovery phase of what the client wants, and so they can sort of then config the tool to their client's need, and they charge the client a lot of money for that, way more than the subscription costs of the licensing of the software itself, which is charged by head office. So they've kind of almost outsourced all the implementation, and because of that cost being so high, right, and that taking so long and being such a manual process, that is sort of like this, the sunk cost fallacy comes into play here a bit, where not only are they spending a lot of money on it, but it takes a long time. So then they're sort of more committed to it. So it's almost a double-edged sword sometimes. If you're spending less and doing that like really quickly and automated, where do you see that dynamic sort of playing out? It's hard, isn't it? Because if someone's choosing between Salesforce and maybe you can get set up within 20 minutes automatically, and then these other guys are running around with a team of 30 people, and months later still don't have basic sort of implementation done. But they're sort of in that sunk cost hole.
The definition of the innovator's dilemma, right? That is it. That is the quintessential idea of, you kind of have to out-innovate yourself. You should always be thinking about or evolving that next gen. And if you don't, someone else will. I think what is the core example, right? I think it's like, is it Kodak? And that they invented the digital, or maybe it was Polaroid. They invented the digital camera. But they're like, if we release this, folks won't buy film. And we make more money selling film than we do selling cameras. So we shouldn't do this. Well, I think that story ends. Like it's the innovator's dilemma. It's like you kind of have to out innovate yourself, and the idea is you do that from within, right? And those cycles will be okay. But not doing it or avoiding it it inevitably will catch up.
Great. Okay. Well, I think it's good that you're sort of, almost doing that, like you just said it, to your own company. Like, you're an automation stack, but then you see AI can automate lots of this stuff, but you're like, well, actually, it's a tool to enhance what is already, our core offering in a way. So I think it's a good way to think about it. Okay, so we did mention brand versus performance, right? And this sort of duality there that needs to exist. And what's also topical right now is the measurement piece. So we've got privacy crackdowns happening around Apple devices, which are taking away a large chunk of the integrity of the granularity and accuracy of the data that maybe is being fed into certain acquisition channels and the reporting platforms of the back end of that. Now, what's happened as a result is that some third-party sort of like estimation tools are coming in saying, hey, well, let's blend these channels together, and that conversion came from here or whatever. So this is kind of like a crude MMM model, but there's a lot of like black box stuff happening there as well. Either way, I'm finding performance sort of marketers or CMOs that are in these positions are sort of still indoctrinated into that view of money in, direct action, conversion, customer acquired, and then sort of basing a lot of the unit economics off that. But when you start doing brand activities, it's a bit harder to measure some of these things, right? So how have you tackled that duality, maybe long and short-term effects, different measurement techniques, maybe this edge towards more of an MMM model that everybody's talking about? And just maybe some experiences from your own sort of situation over the last year or two around that.
Yeah, I have probably a really good story here.
Okay.
One of the things we do is we run what we call study halls, and they're 2-day workshops where we literally go into different markets around the globe and meet with our customers or prospects, and we just teach them how to use ActiveCampaign. We walk through the different odds and ends of the platform. And I was at a study hall earlier this year. I just like to walk through and talk to customers. Again, back to those first principles. And I was talking to someone. I said, hey, like, how'd you find ActiveCampaign? How'd you hear about this? And he tells me the story where he says, I got 45 sales reps, and the one thing I didn't want them doing was sending emails. I don't want them just copying and pasting or finding ways to type out personal outreach emails. I wanted to find a way to automate that. So he's like, I just Googled how to send personalized outbound sales emails. And he's like, I found a YouTube video of someone talking about it, and they were literally demoing ActiveCampaign and how they set it up. He's like, so I went to Google, search ActiveCampaign, clicked on it, created a trial, tried to recreate what was in that video. And he's like, wasn't perfect, but I got what I needed and figured it out. And yeah, I've been here a few years and it's working like a charm. And this light bulb just like went off in my head where I was like, oh my goodness, like my attribution would be first or last touch. It would just look like organic brand, right? And if I took that to heart and ran marketing strategies against that, well, I'd probably end up sponsoring different events. I would go deeper into PR and earned media and all these different areas. And that's not how he found us. It was through an influencer and one of our customers who found value in ActiveCampaign, right? And shoot, the data would have never told us that. So one of the things we did was just opened up direct attribution in the platform. So after you sign up, we'll ask you, hey, how did you hear about ActiveCampaign? Or how did you first discover ActiveCampaign? And one of the things I see folks do is they'll make that a drop down. It will be search engine, or it will be from a friend. It will be social media, magazine, television, radio, etc. I didn't want to do that in the sense that what would that person even put? What would be their answer, right? Like what they might put search engines in there, I guess, because they searched it. Maybe they'll say social because you might think YouTube's a social channel. Like I just knew that we weren't going to get the most accurate data, right? So we just made it open text box. And everyone's like, how are you going to get any information on that? Again, it's high velocity business. You can have thousands of responses every month. Like, how will you figure that out? I was like, oh, there's AI. And we just feed the data to AI and ask it, hey, what are the themes here? What like you give me the data. And it does. And it does it actually very surprisingly well. And what we can do then is just more inspection on what is someone saying is the key moment they found us or discovered us. And then cross-reference that to the data we have. What was the first touch, last touch, or multi-touch there within between? And can we start to identify more of the threads or themes there where there's those so-called magic moments where that person really finds ActiveCampaign versus maybe they had seen an ad and had several impressions even before that, right?
Yep.
So we're layering all of that out to just get a better sense of what it is. And it's just kind of uniquely pulls in AI to do some of that with us. So things are changing, but I don't know, for the better.
Okay, great. I mean, I know Chris Walker's been talking about this. Like, you just described how did you find about our servers, or you can use an acronym for that with like an open-ended question instead of like canned responses. Yeah. It's funny because I used to do the canned responses, right? And I noticed that they would just pick the laziest, the top one on the list because they just want to go to the next thing. So when I started randomizing the ordering of those things, even as a canned response, the data would change, like statistically. Quite significantly. Yeah. So yeah, just the way you order it can change quite a bit. So I'm a big fan of like just a sort of a custom text box, like no canned responses. Otherwise you're priming them as well. And then, the convenience factor sort of comes into play. So, okay, that's really good. Okay. I've got 5 questions to finish and we'll go from there. What is a book? I've got a whole stack of books here right next to me, which is pretty sad. I don't have time to read often, but is there a book? Obviously, I can see a shelf. So you've got quite a few there, but is there something you've read recently or keep coming back to that's changed your thinking for the better?
I could give you books in nauseam, and I would say, give me a topic or specific function. But one book I always honestly, I read it every year, and it's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And it's kind of this fable, fictitious story of a leadership team that just goes through some struggles and how to come together. And it honestly almost describes to a T every team I've been on. And just inevitably, there's just some things we got to figure out how to work together. And the book does such a great job of kind of outlining that in a pretty entertaining way. So it's one of my favorites.
Okay. What about a piece of tech that you can't do without every day and it helps you do your job better? Now, this can be hardware or software.
Is every answer to these are going to be just ActiveCampaign? That is a somewhat of a cop-out answer, but that is absolutely true. I kid you not. Like it is. I mentioned earlier, I use it every single day. It is the one I'm in. It drives our entire go-to-market motion. Like it. Yeah. Second to that, and this is maybe an easy answer too, but it's Google Docs. Like so much of my time is spent just working, collaborating, talking to folks, and just organizing ideas, be it in spreadsheets, presentations, more formal written documents. And it's such a strong product, honestly.
Now it's over to you to promote whatever you wish. If you haven't done so already, what do you want to get the word out there today that sort of is close to your heart?
Would it be such a curveball if I didn't pick ActiveCampaign? No, I think if folks are interested in ActiveCampaign, absolutely check it out. And if I'm happy to share more about it too with them too. But honestly, I was at a startup leading product design, front end development, and it's kind of one of those, almost a stereotypical story where the product you build and are selling to your customers at the end of the startup realize that might not have been the most valuable piece of how we operated and ran. And the most valuable piece was the one-on-one meetings that we had. And it was me and the head of engineering came up with kind of a format to change questions that you ask people every single week in a one-on-one. So rather than sitting down and just saying, "Hey John, how are you doing this week?" or "How are you feeling?" and getting the same repetitious answer, right? We just came up with a set of questions that are very introspective in nature. And so even the idea of, I could ask you, are you making progress in your goals this week? And you would probably say, I don't mean to project on you, but you might say, not great. I've had some things pop up. My internet went out this day. I had a customer I had to dig into an issue with this day. So I'm not making a ton of progress. So just such an innocent question could lead to a negative sentiment or thought. Where if you just change just even the wording of that so slightly to, are you doing your best to make progress on your goals this week? It becomes much more introspective, and you could say, ooh, everything else is still true. The internet went out. I had to go fix this customer issue, but I did lay off the gas. I had a meeting canceled, and I could have taken that opportunity to, formalize that research I've been working on and make some progress on it. But I didn't. And that moment is so powerful, by which, as a leader, I'm probably never going to see that or get a sense of it, honestly. And even if I do, and I'm able to articulate that to you, it does not mean as much as you seeing it yourself in coaching one, right? Like understanding the own coaching you have. So a lot of the questions we developed were around that. And we just started sharing those with folks, friends around similar roles at different companies. And so many of them were like, you need to build this into a product. But this needs to be an app by which I can schedule my meetings, I can collect all my responses, and just layer in some efficiency to it. So we built that, 7 some odd years ago. And it's, there's people globally using it right now. That's it's been wild. So yeah, that's called Lead Honestly.
What's the best way for other people to contact you if they're listening to this now and they sort of want to reach out? Obviously, if they want to buy the product, you maybe go to the sales team. You probably don't have a lot of time, pretty full inbox, but maybe professionally they want to connect with you, say hello, whatever. What's your preferred medium?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the absolute best. It's just Shay Howe on LinkedIn. Fortunate to have a pretty unique name, so it should be easy to find me. And yeah, you're welcome to send over a message or just a request to connect, and I'm happy to do so.
Thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. I know you're extremely busy and doing good things there, so I really appreciate your time. And until next time, thanks for coming on the show.
Likewise, John. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a really fun conversation.